Hi, everyone. Welcome, Azure Cosmos DB Live TV, episode number 48. We're going to talk about Spring Boot today, or Spring Data, or Spring Apps, or all that. I'm joined by Mark Heckler. Hi, Mark. How are you?
Hi, Mark. I'm fine. How are you doing?
It's going to get awfully confusing around here, isn't it?
It's not necessarily a bad thing, though, right?
That's not a bad thing. I like your name. Makes it easy for me to remember who I'm talking to, I guess. So
Same.
So you're going to talk to us about, and show us, actually, this is really just pretty much going to be you and an editor this episode. So we'll go over how to use Spring Data or connect to Cosmos while you're using Spring and Spring Data for your app. So tell us a little bit about yourself first. Who's Mark?
Well, I actually... I kind of go into this with my massive volume of slides that I brought, like 3 slides, I think. But yeah, I'll go ahead and kick things off here. So yeah, I'm, as Mark mentioned, the first Mark, I'm just kind of here to talk about Cosmos DB from a Spring developer's perspective, and just to give a kind of a quick and gentle introduction, because I think it's just a really valuable topic to cover. I wanted to give a quick intro, and then of course at a future date, if we want to dive deeper into any particular topic, specific topic, we can. But this is just kind of a broad strokes introduction. But I am a principal cloud advocate of Java and JVM languages with Microsoft. I do come from the Spring team, so I worked at Pivotal and VMware before coming here. So I kind of see it from both sides, and it gives me I feel like a pretty good perspective on the gold mine of tools that we have when we put everything together. It's just amazing. But here are my coordinates. If you're anything like me, you think of the best questions or comments or feedback 10 minutes after you disconnect, after you walk away. So by all means, if you think of something you want to ask in the chat, ask it. But if you don't think of something until afterward, don't feel like, oh, I missed my opportunity, please do reach out to me. My Microsoft account is there. My personal account is there. I have, like everybody else, I have a half a dozen emails, but these are the 2 that I check the least infrequently. And I say it that way because the bottom line is really where I spend most of my time and am the most easily reached, which is on Twitter at mkheck. And if you do happen to be new to Twitter for whatever reason, I mean, people come into the industry every day or get exposed to different areas within the industry. So if you do happen to just create a Twitter account and follow me and send me a DM, my DMs are open, so that's fine. I'll get it. Don't worry about that. But yeah, cool. Let's talk. Yeah.
So talk about what. Okay, and this is great. You're actually from the team that created Spring. So let's talk about you a bit. But I'd like to understand what is Spring or why Spring, and then these other elements of Spring Data, Spring Boot, all this other stuff. You could.
Yeah, let me back up so I don't have that guy staring at us the whole time. But yeah, it's if and I initially was going to come to this from a Spring developer's perspective and just talk Cosmos, but I really think it's valuable to come from the other direction as well, because there are a lot of folks who use Cosmos who may be less acquainted with Spring. Spring Framework was basically the answer to complex enterprise Java back in the day. Because when enterprise Java kind of came into being early on, and this is ancient history now, but if anybody goes back that far, they realize kind of what a difficult, cumbersome thing it was.
This is J2EE you're talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and yeah, those are days that make people shudder if they have memories of them, and if not, they've read the lore, you know. So, uh, and without going too much into history, which I'm a history nut, so I could probably fill up the whole time talking today just about that, and I promise you I won't do that. But Spring was created to provide a better way, to provide a more Java centric without making it overly complex, specifically for server side Java way. Which, I mean, this is where we kind of live nowadays. So it seems odd to take it more to a standard Java or Java SE type of focus to extend that to the server model. But here we are. So Spring Framework simplifies things. Spring Boot simplifies Spring Framework because Spring Boot introduces a lot of things on top of Spring Framework. But I kind of point to three in particular, which is simplified deployment, simplified dependency management, and auto configuration. And I'll hit on those very briefly. But simplified deployment basically means that it will run, a Spring Boot application will run anywhere there's a JVM. So whether it's bare metal, VMs, containers, your laptop, it doesn't really matter as long as you have a JVM, a Java virtual machine there, it runs. And of course, now we're getting into some cool stuff with Spring Native. And I won't even cover any of that topic today, as far as the native versus the different compilation and deployment options, but it's there and we can talk about that at a future date. You have simplified dependency management because if you're familiar with, and if you have bad memories of doing things in Java where you have to list pages and pages of dependencies to do things, you're used to that kind of the thought process that says, well, I need to do this thing. So I need to have this library to do this and this library to do this. And that necessitates this other library. And you end up with 30 to 50 to heaven only knows how many dependencies in your build file, whether it's POM, Gradle, build file, whatever. And of course, with Spring Boot, the idea was made to centralize around capabilities. So for a particular capability, you may have 5, 10, 25 different dependencies, but it's a capability you're providing, and you're going to need those pretty much consistently every time you do that thing that provide that capability. So it allows you to elevate your focus. You can override any of the downstream dependencies, but in most cases you don't have to, and you don't want to, because all of these things have been battle tested together. So that's really nice. And then auto configuration is the other thing. And if you've come from an enterprise Java perspective outside of Spring, it can be a little disconcerting because there is a lot of what sometimes Java EE folks call, or now Jakarta EE folks call magic. And it's not magic, it's technology. These are things and opinions that are built into the startup of Spring Boot applications, where they will, upon startup, your application will inspect your code. It will check your class path. It will look at your annotations, your properties you're setting, the beans you're defining. And it will say, look, for instance, I like to talk about Spring Data, which is why I'm here, right? But when you extend an interface defined in Spring Data in your Spring Boot application, and you have a database driver on your class path in your dependencies, it doesn't take a genius to say, well, look, if you're providing a database driver to your application and you're extending an interface that's defined in Spring Data, chances are you want to talk to a database. And this is not a huge logical leap. I mean, this makes a lot of sense. So this is where auto configuration comes into being and works hard for you, so you can focus on the things that you want and need to do to provide real business value for your customers, your end users, and your community. You can override any of it, which is nice, but you don't have to in 90+% of the cases, which is super productive for us as developers.
That's okay. Well, that's great. I love all these things that you're describing here, and it makes sense why you would have these things. And kind of going back in my distant memory of late 90s, I can recall some of that, having done some J2EE back in the day. So okay,
I saw you shudder, by the way, when you said
yeah,
that.
that's and my hair is on Margie as well for that and other.
It's like, uh,
All right, so all right, what's next? I guess we're gonna want to
well,
do some
yeah.
coding.
Yeah, if you're okay with it, I'll just kind of launch in. I'll tell a little bit more about myself, and then we'll just get
Yeah,
into the code, because the code is where I live, and that's kind of where the fun and the productive stuff is. I feel like that's where the rubber hits the road. So let's get rolling. As Mark mentioned, a bit more about me. I am an architect and developer by background. I am also an advocate. Obviously, that's where I live, kind of here at Microsoft. I am an author. I have co-authored a couple of books, contributed content and code to several others. I actually solo authored a book, which I'll mention in our show here in a minute. I am a Java 1 rockstar, a Java champion, Kotlin developer expert, and a licensed pilot, licensed instrument rated pilot, because everyone needs a hobby, and this is a really great way to expand your brain in different ways. I love the instrument rating part of it, because a lot of folks, a lot of pilots, when they move on to that instrument rating, it's hard to trust the computer, trust the instruments. And that's where we live, right? So to me, it was like, this is great. This is much preferred to, having to do the visual scan. I mean, not that you don't do that, but you have to, when you're in the soup, you have to trust your instruments, which again, this is where we live. So it's a good way to stretch your brain in different ways.
Yeah.
The book that I mentioned is Spring Boot Up and Running. I swore I would never solo author a book, but the pandemic hit, and again, you have to do something, right? So I did do this. I felt like it added a little bit of a different voice to the information that was out there. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it. There are a lot of good books, a lot of great knowledge out there. I just felt like maybe if every author has a different way of covering things and a different choice in terms of what they include and don't include. And I felt like I could maybe add a little bit of clarity to things if possible. If you're interested, check out a free evaluation following the link. I think O'Reilly gives you a couple weeks to check it out. If not, that's cool too, but why not? So actually, I love to start with this quote. I'm a kind of a quote fiend too. I love history. I love flying. I love a good quote. And I love this one from Leonard Bernstein, who was the former conductor of the New York Philharmonic Orchestra and a composer. He once said, to achieve great things, two things are needed: a plan and not quite enough time. And I think we probably have enough time today, but I just still love the quote. And there's never is really enough time. I mean, let's face it, you get on a tear and you start talking about things and you enjoy yourself. And before you realize it, it's bedtime. So
No,
I'm
and
kidding.
also, it's a very good quote. I do like it. I think the bit about not quite enough time helps you focus, is what I would always is how I would interpret that, right? So if you have all kinds of time, you will procrastinate or just otherwise lose focus. But when deadlines are looming, I don't know. I tend to work better under pressure than otherwise. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think it's a clarifying influence, right?
yes, yep.
So I do promise I won't keep us here till bedtime. I
Okay.
promise. Not today, maybe another time. So
Okay.
with that, let's code, because that's all the stuff to get out of the way. And if anybody doesn't recognize this gentleman, this is a little dated now, but please do check out the IT Crowd. It's just hilarious. So anyway, all right. So let's go here. Yeah. So there are many ways to create a Spring Boot application. I like to go to the Spring Initializer because it makes things very simple and straightforward to do it. But the nice thing about the initializer is, well, you can hand code your own bespoke artisanal Spring Boot applications completely by hand, but it's not a very productive use of your time. So I don't recommend it. Most of the time, we as developers, we do what needs done to get the job done, but we don't want to focus on boilerplate, nonsensical, repetitive tasks that don't add value, right? We want to get to the good stuff. So I always point people here to the Spring Initializer. It has the same API if you want to curl it, HTTP it, use it through your IDE. I like to come here because it gives a couple of extra benefits that you don't get those other ways, and I'll show you those here in a moment. But the ultimate objective is just to get your application started, right? So this is opinionated, right? So we can choose whatever build system we want. I mean, again, it does have some opinions. So it starts us off on the kind of the widest path. But if you use Maven for your build system, that's fine. You can choose to build a Maven project. If you're a hipster, you can choose to build a Gradle project. That's cool. You can do that too. It works. Language is Java, Kotlin, or Groovy. I'm going to stick with Java today, but you have options there. 2.7.1 is the current, as of today, like today, version of Spring Boot. So I know my code worked with 2.7.0. So we'll see. Exciting things can happen, right? But worst case, we'll roll back to 2.7.0 and we'll life will go on
Good.
there.
I like it. Coding without a net. It's the way it should be.
That's right. It's real when things break in real time. So
That's right.
So I'm going to just change some metadata here because for some reason it never works when I use example.com. I'm kidding. I just I like to use my domain. So and I'm going to I guess I really struggled with this, but I want to keep things as simple as possible on the extraneous stuff and focus on the things that I really want to hone in on. So I want to show a couple of things. Well, a couple of big things and branch out from there, right? But I want to show Cosmos DB primarily from a SQL perspective to start off. And I say that because for those of you who are coming from a Spring perspective and less familiar with Cosmos DB, say that 3 times fast. Cosmos DB gives you a lot of capabilities because with Spring Boot, with Spring Data, Spring, any project involving Spring, you have opinions, but you have flexibility and you have the ability to scale pretty easily and pretty rapidly. And if your database can keep up with you on that, even to a global scale, it gives you a lot of power that you may not have even realized you had in your hands. So with Azure, with Cosmos DB, you have some crazy scaling capabilities, but you also have some crazy flexibility benefits. So if you're dealing with a SQL environment, you can use Cosmos DB with SQL. So I'm just going to create Cosmos SQL. So we'll create this application we're going to call just Cosmos SQL. And we're going to use the SQL API for Cosmos, but it doesn't stop there because if you're coming from another environment like Cassandra or Mongo or Gremlin, you have the options to use different APIs with Cosmos and have that same global scalability and flexibility that you are used to having with your applications, maybe not with your databases. So that's really a powerful capability, I feel like, to add to the mix. So we're going to just call this Spring Boot Cosmos DB SQL. That's just description, so just nice extra. We're going to use jar packaging because after all, this is 2022. So we can bundle everything up in a fully deployable unit, a single unit that we can deploy anywhere. There's a JVM, so I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to use Java 17 because that's a current LTS long-term support version of Java. I'm using, by the way, the Microsoft OpenJDK build of Java 17. So that's kind of nice that we have a build that we fully support. And I'm going to add some dependencies. And this is where you start to see that capability focus versus like 50 million different dependencies that you might add. You add capability dependencies, right? So I'm going to start off with, we'll bring in our reactive web dependency. You have the option to build Spring web applications using Spring MVC, which are inherently blocking, right? They're inherently what sometimes is referred to as imperative applications. Not 100% accurate in the description, but it's close enough. It kind of is an understood term, but basically blocking. And then you have reactive applications, reactive streams-based applications, which allow you to have non-blocking flow control type of applications, which again, that's another whole topic I want to get into at some point, but certainly not today, right?
When you say blocking or non-blocking, do you mean synchronous versus asynchronous? Is that what you mean?
It's a little bit more than that. And okay, so you teased me. I have to come back with this because asynchronous doesn't imply any kind of flow control. So if I'm a client and I say, look, give me everything you have, and it's an asynchronous request, and there are 1 million or 50 million records that come back, I'm just going to try to absorb all of those. And what happens typically with a client, even the most beefy of clients, that if it can't keep up, it falls over and crashes. So bad things happen, whether it's asynchronous or synchronous. But with a reactive streams-based application, you have asynchronicity, but you also have the ability to say, look, I'm a slower client. Maybe I'm a mobile client here out on a 4G network. So I know I can't handle however many you might feed back to me if it's a huge number, but I can handle 100 and process 100 records at a time or 100 objects at a time. So give me 100. So it implies, it imposes a flow control. And that means that I get 100, I process them, I request the next 100, I process them, or 500 or 50 or whatever the number is.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you that asynchronicity, but it also gives you the ability to provide what they call back pressure and flow control, which is a nice extra bump.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay. All right. I get it. Interesting. Okay.
yeah. So everything is built as far as the Azure JDK is built, or SDK, excuse me, is built around reactive first. And that's typically the way it's typically done, because it's easy to go from a non-blocking to blocking, but it's harder to go the other way around. So I'm going to bring in the reactive web capability that lets us build reactive or non-reactive applications. I'm going to also bring in this case, Azure Cosmos, which you might imagine, right? This allows us to connect to Azure Cosmos database using the SQL support. And then I'm going to bring in Lombok because I'm a lazy developer, lazy good, not lazy bad. I want to be very clear about that. But this helps us to further reduce our boilerplate. There are other ways to do it too, but as you'll see, I lean on Lombok for more than just like data classes and things like that. So I'm going to generate the project now. Oh, I should say before I do that, let me just back up here. One of the nice things about going through the Spring Initializer, and the initializer should be clear, doesn't generate your code for you. What it does is generate the project structure for you. And the distinction is important, because while it does create your main application class main method, it's like 4 or 5 lines. But what it does do is give you your dependencies, your build file, and sets everything up for you to launch out quickly and build your own code very nicely. The other nice thing that the initializer does is, if you want to explore your project, you can pull it up and just take a look at your project structure. And specifically, as you can see, it starts here on the build file, and it shows you exactly what your dependencies are before you even download it, unzip it, open it in your IDE. So it saves you some time in case you say, oh, I missed something here. You can go in and look at this and go back and then add more dependencies or what have you. So in this case, we have everything we need. I'll go ahead and generate this. I'll drop this onto my desktop, which looks like I have another project sitting out there that's reminding me that I need to do something with that, but that's fine. We'll come back to that another day. And where did it go? There we go. No, that's not it. Okay, so let's just do this the hard way. And my Mac is spinning. Oh, there we go. Okay, so that looks better. Yeah, I just of all times for it to just decide it's going to spin here. So that's fine. So let's bring this over. We'll open this up. You can use whatever IDE you want. I typically use IntelliJ, but I also use VS Code quite extensively because we have good Java support in there as well. But I'm used to using IntelliJ, so I use that kind of for my daily driver for a lot of things, maybe 60/40. And that's what I'll be using here today. So here's our project. I always like to go in and just look at the POM file, the Maven POM file first, just to kind of show that. And as you can see, this is built around our Spring Boot starter POM and 2.7.1. So hopefully things will go well today. If not, like I said, we'll adjust. We have the current version of Java, which is 17. We've got certain versions here, other versions, in this case for Azure 4.2.0. And then, of course, we have our dependencies, and these are our bundled dependencies, which you can understand and see that they actually incorporate everything needed to provide that full capability versus just one thing at a time. So it allows you to have a much shorter build file and have everything in there that you really need. So with that, let's go to our application properties, which for a Spring Boot application is one place that you can provide sensible defaults for your application. You can pull in environment variables from a number of sources and take advantage of values that you want to use to configure your application. But this is kind of the sensible place for starting. And then, of course, you can override them based on a hierarchy of priorities. So I'm going to just provide some properties here. Cosmos dot. That's too large. Let's see. I can't. There we go. Yeah, so I want to define a few properties here. I actually have some properties defined out in my environment. I didn't want to necessarily show all the inside baseball specific URLs and links and all that stuff, keys. So I'm going to just point to those here. So I'm going to point to my Cosmos DB. Let's see, this is where's this URL? Yeah, I don't remember the specific verbiage behind that.
Yeah, we'll find out when it runs or doesn't run.
I'm pretty sure that was SQL URL. We'll find out. Yeah, I was gonna say this is the fun thing about doing it live. So I know the database I want to point to, which is Cosmos. Again, we'll either hit big or we'll miss big here. So SQL DB, I think it is, and then Cosmos. I always want to add that, and then the key. So of course, this is the part I can't show. Otherwise, I'd have to just reformat everything, and that's never a good thing. So key. So that looks like that should work, maybe. SQL DB, SQL name, I don't know, somewhere in there, something like that. So we'll find out. So let's go ahead and go to our code. Again, I'm going to keep this fairly streamlined today, just to make sure we focus on the stuff that I really want to focus on, and not the window dressing. So I'm going to define a domain class here. We'll just call this class our user class, and we'll have some basic properties here. So we have a member variable here for our ID, and then we also have our last name. And let's see, private string. We'll want our first name in here. So we have a user ID first name, and then let's go ahead and create an address for them. Why not, right? And then, of course, since I'm using Lombok, I want to make this a data class. I want to have a norex constructor. I want to have an allrex constructor, right? And then, since I'm going to be storing this, I want to indicate that the container for this is called data. I believe I named it. Again, we'll find out. And I want to indicate this is my ID field. And I want to generate a value, or I should be more specific, have Cosmos DB generate a value for me. I want to indicate the first name is a non-null value. The second name, or the last name, is a non-null value. It's also what I'm going to use for a partition key, which is a terrible partition key, by the way, but I'm using it just as an example today, so bear with me. The reason I'm sprinkling these non-nulls out here is because Lombok as a library gives me, when I say I want, actually I should make this a required args constructor, right? Let's do that. Because anything that I indicate as non-null, if I ask Lombok to provide a constructor that includes all required arguments, it looks for these. So anything with non-null, it will create a constructor with a parameter for each one of these fields that are listed as non-null, required to be non-null. Because I want to create a constructor, I want to have Lombok create a constructor for me that doesn't include this, because I want Cosmos DB to provide that ID for me. So that about does that. Now that's our domain, right? So I'm going to then create an interface here called our user repository. And this is one of the things I was mentioning earlier. We're going to extend a reactive Cosmos repository, which is defined. It's a Spring Data repository. I say Spring Data, but obviously it's an Azure Cosmos repository, but it's an extension. In fact, if I go here and look, it extends a reactive sorting repository, which is a Spring Data repository. So it's turtles all the way down, right? And we're going to be storing objects of type user with IDs of type string. And that is all we need for Spring Boot to say, look, you're extending a Spring Data repository. You have Azure Starter Data Cosmos right here in your class path. So therefore, you're going to want to talk to Cosmos. And then, of course, we provide the properties that allow it to do that. So it handles a lot of the boilerplate that you may be used to dealing with in other Java contexts, and takes that off your plate so you can deal with the stuff that you really want or need to deal with that adds real business value versus how do I connect to a connection pool and that kind of thing.
So that container statement there, that comes from our Spring SDK?
Yes.
Essentially, okay. And that's, okay. So essentially that maps your I don't know what you call them, Java data class, whatever you call them. I mean, we call them POCOs in .NET land or C# land.
Yep.
That's basically your data class, your domain class you have there.
Exactly.
And, yep. Okay, makes sense. Okay, are there other? Can I mix? Can I have like another class that also can be in that container?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I can mix entities.
Yep.
Okay.
And by the way, it's POJOs in Java, plain old Java objects. So
POJO.
Yeah, it's funny.
POSO or PostDO. I don't know. SDO, I don't for Spring Data. Okay. And that user class could be any shape, basically, right? So I can just
Right.
essentially serialize whatever data in any shape, basically straight through to the container with those things.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Absolutely. And then, of course, what I want to do is show a way that we can kind of get to the data, and then I want to feed some data in. So I'm going to
Okay.
start with the get to, because that's kind of where I like to. I always kind of point to first from the external API perspective. So I'm going to create a REST controller, which is just a Spring Boot controller, a Spring Framework, I should say, controller, but it provides back the payload of whatever object structures you're dealing with. So we'll call this, again, cleverly enough, our Cosmos SQL controller. And anything works, but I'm just, I like to keep it consistent. So we'll make this, what I'm going to do now is inject our user repository. We'll just call this repo. And of course, we can do this multiple ways. Sometimes you see old style code as just a direct auto-wired statement, but that's not good for testing, because that means you have to provide that built in. You can't just instantiate an instance of the class by providing all dependencies with it, with a constructor. So what you typically do is you can create a constructor with that as a parameter. Now, what I'm going to do is a further shortcut of that, which is just ask Lombok to provide an all-args constructor for me, which means that any member variable I have here, it's going to create a constructor with that as a parameter. So it handles that for me as well, which is kind of a nice little extra. So let's see, what do I want to do next? I want to provide that external API. So I'm going to make a get mapping here, and I'm going to just map this from the root, just for starters. And again, this is not how you'd normally build a fully fleshed out API. It's just expedient for today. And I'm going to return a flux of user. And this is where we get into the reactive streams part. Because, for example, in the imperative world, in the blocking world, when you have a method, you have a way to return a value, 0 or 1 values, and let's say of an object. If you do a search for a particular person, a particular user, and there is no user that matches those criteria, then it returns nothing, right? It doesn't return that a user, but at most it will return a user if you're searching for a specific user. You can also in Java return a collection, if you will, a number of users that match a particular query, or say all users in the data store or whatever. And that's typically sometimes referred to as an iterable. So you have this iterable of users. Reactive Streams actually takes that and makes it into a publisher. So you have a publisher which can return 0 to n. We build around the Reactor, which is one of the implementations of the Reactive Streams specification. And Reactor specializes publishers into two things which kind of match that imperative world. It can return 0 or 1 values. So instead of an object of type T, you'd return a mono of type T. Or you would, instead of returning an iterable or a small collection or a large collection of users or objects of type T, more generically, no pun intended, you can return a flux, which is 0 to n. But you'll have operations that make sense for a particular, like returning a mono, 0 or 1, and you'll have operations that apply more specifically to a large number of values coming back. And then you'll have operations that apply to both. So it makes sense to specialize those and use whatever more closely approximates your use case.
Okay, yeah. Flux is like an array, or like you said, an iterable collection. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And the thing about it, non-blocking is, let's say you have 8 values that you're returning, or in this case, I'll just throw 2 or 3 different values out there. So it doesn't really matter if you're blocking or not at that point. And not to get into the whole threading model and things like that. But if you have a small number of values you're returning, you're not going to be waiting long, assuming there are resources available,
Yep.
Whether it's blocking or not. But let's say you have a value that comes in once a second until the heat death of the universe. So you don't want to wait until the last value comes in before you return them all. You really can't effectively. And that's where a Reactive Streams publisher comes in. It can feed that data back in a drip. OneDrive is verifying. How nice. At least it didn't reboot and apply.
That would be tragic.
So
Okay.
that's another story for another time. But yeah, so the flux, we can wait for everything, or we can just send them back as they come, but allows us that option as well.
Okay. Yeah, makes
So
sense.
I'm going to return our repo dot, and we see that we have some operations that are baked in by default. So find all by a particular ID. We can check, for instance, we can delete all, we can delete one, we can get a count, we can save one, save all, publisher of values that we provide. I'm actually just going to, in this case, return all values because that, again, gets us just something we can test and play with. And wow, I'm getting all kinds of notifications. So even though I stopped notifications, that's so strange. But
the Teams doesn't take no for an answer.
I guess not. Yeah, I have D&D is set, so go figure. But anyway, so yeah, so I'm going to create this very simple API. I'm just going to return all users in the data store, and that's sufficient. But now I need to put some in there so we actually have some. So I'm going to just create a component. And this is something that by annotating a class as a component, we'll call this our data loader component. What Spring Boot does is it will create a bean of this type and place it into our inversion of control container, and it will do what needs done to have that available for us. I'm actually going to, again, once again, inject our user repository repo, and we'll make this add all constructor, let Lombok do some of the heavy lifting. I'm going to make a post construct method, annotate this as post construct. So once the bean is created, this method will kick off and run. So I'm going to just call this load data. Many ways you can do this, command line runner, application runner, whatever, but I kind of like this approach because it's very generic, very generically Java. So is what it is. So I'm going to just do a repo. And then one of the operations I mentioned earlier is we can delete all. And this just means that I do this because that way, if I leave stuff not cleaned up behind me between executions of our application, it will delete the data that's in there and I won't have duplicate rows. So that's just for my housekeeping. And then once I delete everything, I want to do a then many operation, which takes a flux, a publisher of some form. And I'm going to create a flux of just these values. So I'm going to create a new user, and that's fine. So I'm going to, let's see, we'll provide a last name, a first name, last name. I'm going to use the ICAO, the generic international alphabet here, the phonetic alphabet. So alpha, last name of Bravo. It's just easier because I don't have to think up names that way. And then we'll create an address of 123 North 4th Street. And that's cool. And then we got one user, so let's do another user. And we'll say that's Charlie Delta, which actually works out really well for the name, right? Charlie Delta. Delta. And then Charlie is living on, I don't know, 321 South 99th Street, 99th Avenue. There we go. So that's fine. That's enough for now. And then I want to flat map that. So I can do a repo save. And then what I can do is just output what happens as it happens. But what I really want to do is make sure they're all saved and then do a then many once again and just do a repo.findAll and then take the output of that and subscribe to it. So then I can see what's happening. Now I'm going to once again lean on Lombok and ask Lombok to provide a logger for me using SLF for J, which is kind of a generic abstraction over the top of any loggers. Spring Boot uses logback by default, so it will leverage that. But I'm going to take each user and I'm just going to do a log.info of those users, or of that user, I should say, and we'll print that out. And that gets us started, right? So this is just our data creation mechanism right here, our data loader. If I don't want to do that anymore, once I have things set up, I just comment out that annotation. It won't create the bean. Everything goes along merrily.
It's very concise, which is surprising to me because I never really equate Java with being concise. At least not a lot of the Java I've seen. But this is quite compact. For all those operations you did. This would take more in a .NET application for sure.
Well, and there are many ways to do it. I like to whittle things down to the essentials, and with Project Reactor and with the Reactive Streams API built into Reactor, it gives you the options to chain operations here like this, which is very nice. So you have more of a functional approach. Well, it is a functional approach, I should say. And you have immutable data as it passes through the chain, which is also very nice, very good thing to have, because that way you don't have to worry about mutability creeping in and wrecking your expectations and your data. But it also, I put Lombok to use here. I don't have to use Lombok. I can use Java records ever since, I guess, Java 16, I guess, when it was official. But I like to use Lombok because, again, I don't use it just for the data classes. So I kind of use it for a lot of different tools. But I do like it tight and compact, and Spring Boot and Reactor helps make that happen. So
yeah.
now I actually have this again. I'm running this here. I'm going to be pulling in these data values. So I could run it from my ID, but I would have to actually map that within my ID. So I'm actually just going to go out here and we'll go to our desktop. And there we go. So I'm going to, we'll just do our Maven Spring Boot run, and I'll just run this. Oh, you know what? I do need to do one other thing because I just opened a new window. So let me source my environment variables here. That way I make sure I have everything set up to properly speak to Cosmos. Cue Jeopardy theme song here.
What's the shell script doing now?
All it does is set a bunch of variables with like my key, my security key, and point to the URL and things like that. So if I want to env grep URL, so I have some URL information out here. So for SQL and for Mongo. Let's do that. Maven Spring Boot, and we'll just run the application here. Gives me a chance to take a drink of coffee, so that works. Double the pleasure.
Hey, if you need some more coffee, we can deploy like an ARM template or something.
Yeah, really. We haven't even talked deployment, really. I mean, I'm doing everything local here.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but another time. So yes, I actually did apparently have the right strings, connect strings, because we have here our two users we created. We have our ID, our first name, our last name. And then if I want to go out here and just do, I use HTTPy instead of curl because as they used to call it, I don't think they still call it this, but it's curl for humans, and allows you to, again, it has opinions. So you don't have to put localhost. It assumes localhost, and we get that back and everything kind of works. So that's really nice. I haven't shown anything of the scalability, but it's super easy to get started and connected to the SQL version of Cosmos DB from your Spring Boot application. It's just trivial to do.
Yeah, one of the other interesting differences between our Spring Data SDK and say our .NET SDK is the ID generation. Like that was something that was a bit of a contentious issue when our .NET SDK v3 came out. We had it in there and then we took it out or something like that. There was some discussion about in the community about whether or not we did it or not. And it turns out that more people did not like us doing that. So we ended up not generating the ID. But I see our Spring Data SDK does. So I'm curious, is that more natural for folks in the Spring Data community to have something that's, I don't know, annotated and then it automatically generates IDs or something for you?
Yeah, I find that interesting that was a point of contention because most relational databases, if you go to just across the board, and I think relational, anything that JDBC or JPA, the Java Persistence API or Java Database Connectivity, pretty much anything any data store or database that's supported by those typically has, I don't say everyone, but everyone that comes to mind right now has a way to generate ID values. So MySQL and Oracle database, and I'm pretty sure SQL Server does as well.
Sure.
Postgres, I mean, they all have the ability to do it. And with Spring Data, typically you just add the @generated value annotation, and it says, "Look, handle that for me. You have the power." So it seems, I guess there are probably great reasons why you wouldn't want that to do that, but you have that option to not as well. But it's certainly there, and why not use it? So
yeah, interesting. I love it. This is it's cool. The output looks very nice too. By the way, I don't know.
Yeah. I kind of like the bright colors because again they pop out and it really calls attention to the data you're looking at versus getting lost in the text. But now that's just the SQL side. If I can show you some kind of fun stuff on the other side, because this was my first. Well, it wasn't my first introduction to Cosmos, but it was one of the early introductions that I had that I was really super impressed by. So I'm going to take this in a very different direction right now. But bear with me, I will bring it back around. So I'm going to go back to our Spring initializer, and I'm going to create a MongoDB application. So we'll just call this Cosmos Mongo, because why not, right? Mongo. And everything else can stay the same, but I'm going to remove our Cosmos DB dependency here, and I'm just going to add reactive Mongo. So let's say that you're a Spring Boot developer, and let's say that you've gone all in on Mongo, you're feeling this on premises, you've got a good thing going, and then for whatever reason you feel like I need that global scale. And I realized that early on Mongo referred to themselves as web scale database. Not even sure what that is, but I'm not going to pick on them because mottos are hard, naming is hard, I get that. But if you really want the ability to scale planet scale type of or even eventually, maybe interplanetary scale, Cosmos DB offers you that capability. But let's say you're running along, you've got everything built using MongoDB with a Spring Boot application. So let's start there, shall we? Let's go ahead and do that. Let's build our assumptions, and then we'll build out from there. So let's go here. I'm going to there it is, Cosmos Mongo. I'm going to open that up, unzip that. I'm just unzipping the project and opening that in the IDE. And I should actually go and stop my other application, shouldn't I? So I don't have I guess I could just change the port number, but why do you think simply, right? Let's close that. And once again, we'll look at our POM. Once IntelliJ catches up. There we go. Now, if you notice in here, we have three dependencies. Once again, we have Lombok, again, lazy. We have Webflux, which is our reactive capabilities. But if we don't want reactive, we can just go and get rid of that. And it's imperative, different dependency, but it does basically the same thing. They're parallel types of capability dependencies. And then we have MongoDB reactive, which is the reactive driver for MongoDB. And let's say, again, that we have our application properties. In this case, and I'm going to run this locally, as I mentioned, I'm doing everything locally today just for expediency. But Spring Boot, one of the wonderful things about it is it's developer first focus. And it assumes that as a developer, you're going to be running things locally, and it uses the default port. So I don't have to say localhost for my machine name. I don't have to point to a port number because it's smart enough to know that when you're running Mongo locally, it's going to be using those things. So I'm not going to add anything here at this point, but we'll return to that here in a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and just create basically the same thing here. So class user and private string ID, private string first name, last name, and address. And let's say these are non-null. And this is an at data and at no-args constructor and at required args constructor. And this is a document because we're going to be storing this as a document within Mongo. I'm going to annotate this as an ID, and we want Mongo to generate our value once again. Let's see. Oh, I don't even have to do that. Never mind. So it's even easier than that. Once again, I'm going to extend our interface. We'll call this our user repository, and we're going to extend, in this case, just our generic reactive CRUD repository. We don't need anything specific to Mongo. We just want to be able to grab values and place values and things of that nature. So user, objects type user, ID is a type string, and we'll create our REST controller, and we'll call this our Cosmos Mongo controller. We'll inject our user repository. And once again, add all args constructor. I'm going to add our SLF for J so we can do some logging. And we'll create our get mapping. Once again, I'll just point this to the root URL. We'll return a flux of users. And we'll call this get all users. And import that. And we'll return our repo.find all. And that gets us started there, but we need data once again. So component class, this will be our data loader and our user repository repo. And once again, at all args constructor, and we'll make this our post construct void load data. pretty similar, really. We're going to use our repo. We're going to do a delete all. We'll do a then many. We'll provide a flux of just these values, new user and new user. And then we'll do a then many. We'll do a repo dot, oh, actually I need to flat map that first, right? So I can save those, right? Repo save. And then we'll do a then many. We'll do a repo dot find all. And then we will subscribe. And in this case, once again, we'll take the user. We'll do a log.info. Oops, went crazy there. Log.info. Oh, because I haven't done the SLF4J. That's really where I want it. And then we'll just do this, and we'll do our user dot to string. So now I just need to provide some user information. So once again, here we'll do alpha. Well, let's do some different ones. So we'll do, let's see, Mike, November. And Mike is at 555 East West Street. It's so hard to be clever on the spot, right? So we'll say this is Romeo Sierra.
Unique street names or something.
Yeah. Let's see. So First, Second Street. Yeah, that works. Okay. So I think we have everything we need here. That looks right. I'm really not using that here, so I can just go ahead and remove that. And I'm going to run this. I'll just run it from my IDE because I'm going to connect to a Mongo DB instance I'm running locally using the Docker engine here. And then we'll get into some more fun stuff once we do that. This is just kind of the table stakes at this point.
This code is almost identical to what you had for the SQL API.
It is. And this is the value of using useful abstractions, right? So with Spring Boot and Spring Data, it keeps things very consistent among the two. Let's see if I can, here, let me compare this side by side. This is kind of be a little harder to read, but let's take a look at this and do that. And I have it running down here, but if you take a look at this, a lot of this is the same. So the domain class is probably where you see the greatest difference because I was able to consolidate a few things. I don't have to worry about a partition. Well, I don't have the capability of a partition key in this example, but I also have document specifying that this is a domain class, storing each user as a document in MongoDB. But the interface is largely the same. If I didn't need anything specific Cosmos, I could still use the more generic reactive CRUD repository. The controller is large. Well, in this case, it's identical because I'm basically just returning all users. But
is document a Mongo annotation or Spring?
It's a Spring annotation for Mongo. Yeah. So kind of a little bit of both. So it's So it's here's our import for it, but it's specific to
got it. Spring. So it's delivered. That's delivered by the Mongo.
Yes.
Library. Okay.
Yes, affirmative. And so we're up and running here. Looks like everything is working properly. So let me go out and test that. So I actually, I'm just for clarity, I don't have to do this, but I'm going to just change this so it doesn't throw anybody looking at this later and thinking, well, he's heading the SQL service. No, the SQL service is dead. I killed it. Now I'm running Mongo, but just to keep it straight. So I'm going to hit port 8080. That's the default port for Spring Boot applications, but we could set that differently if we wanted to. But we have our data out there. And of course, we see that actually we did delete any data that might have been lingering out there from a previous run that I'd done, and everything is working fine. So we have, I guess we're pretty close on time, but I do want to show a couple of things here really quickly, because this is where I really feel like the power is. Because right now I've just shown you with this application that I've set up the scenario, right? You're running MongoDB, you're backending to MongoDB with a Spring Boot application using Spring Data, and everything's grand, but you need the scale that you get from Cosmos DB. Maybe you have a lot of other Cosmos DB databases, some in SQL, and you think, you know what, if this is a great tool that I can use for MongoDB work as well and scale out the same. I'm used to using the Azure portal. I'm used to using Azure for a platform. I love what it does for me. How can I take advantage of that with my applications? Well, the answer is very, very simply because you have a couple of properties here that I'm going to be setting. The URI, the URI, and I'm going to point that to an environment variable I already have in place. So that's my Cosmos DB. Still want to add that that T there. I don't know why. URL. And then I also want to add the database name, which in this case I have an environment variable set to Cosmos DB Mongo name. Now, you don't have to do this. What you can do is actually define, you can just define this in a parameter you're passing in. You can have it as an environment variable, whatever. I just do this because that way I have my script set up to push all of these things out into my environment, and then I just map them. But literally, you can feed this value to your application and provide the value so you can update that in a container or otherwise, and everything connects because that's part of Spring Boot's environment variable processing. So I go through a little extra step here as a convenience to me, but it's just super simple. And with this, we're going to point, hopefully, to our Mongo URL, our Cosmos DB Mongo API data store in the cloud. And we're going to tell it which database we want to connect to. And it really is that simple. So I'm going to just save this. And then I'm going to do the Maven Spring Boot run because this is where I have these defined in my environment.
Where do you specify the collection name?
Collection. I like the container. You don't have to do that at all with the Mongo API.
Oh, you don't?
Nope. Oh. So if you notice here, we have our same two users, and we can verify that just by doing this. And now we're connecting and seeing these from Cosmos DB.
So how does it know which collection to write into then? If you have multiple collections, let's say in a Mongo database.
Well, you're defining the document that it's actually going to be placed into. So any items, any objects of type user are going to be placed as a user or stored as a user document.
But what's the collection name?
I'm not sure I follow you.
Like the container for Mongo.
It's not a, how do I say it? It's not, there's not a parallel concept in that regard. So when it comes to Mongo, you basically have the collection of documents, and that's your, I'm coming up empty on how to explain it. I'm doing a really poor job, I know, but so you define the database and you define the document that you're storing, and that's the granularity you have by default.
Okay, interesting. Okay, cool. This is really, I have to say, it's definitely less verbose. Like in Cos or in .NET for our .NET SDK, there's, you would instantiate a new connection to a client, if you will. There's all these different options in there. You have to, you got to specify which regions you want or whatever. It doesn't feel like you have to do any of this in Spring. So.
Oops. I was trying to bring you back where I could see you, and unfortunately it pops up over the code. So yeah, and again, there are several ways you can do this. Spring Boot really focuses on that, again, that developer first experience. And that's where I feel like Cosmos comes in as a really great parallel, because you don't even have to do these if you pass these in directly. I just, again, for convenience, I do that. But how simple is this to go ahead and to be able to basically flip a switch and go to a planetary scale database without making any code changes whatsoever. It's just a phenomenal capability that a lot of people don't even realize is there. So that's what gets me excited in the morning.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, well, I get excited just working on this team, but for exactly that reason though, right? Just the power of having a database, a distributed NoSQL database is just, I mean, it is, what do you call it? Web scale? Is that what you were saying earlier? I guess maybe they call it cloud native these days. I don't remember what the.
Yeah, Mongo initially went with I hate to call it a slogan. Maybe it's just a saying that they were, Mongo database is MongoDB is web scale, and everybody was kind of like, "What's web scale?" Well, I guess it's what you make it. It's sort of like cloud native. It's a term that I think every one of us imputes different values to, but certainly Cosmos DB is crazy flexible in that you can use it as a SQL data store. You can use it as a Mongo database. You can use it as Cassandra, Gremlin. You have the ability to drop it into pretty much any region, anywhere in the world, and scale it across regions. It is that true global database. And it's super easy to use, consume, and to take advantage of the full power of from the Java side using Spring Boot, Spring Data. So yeah, it makes doesn't make life easy. I don't think our lives will ever be easy, because as soon as we accomplish one thing, we always look and expand our scope. That's what we do, right? But it certainly makes it easier to do amazing things, and that's what we're, again, one of the reasons we're here is we like to do amazing things.
I think it is amazing, and I love how concise it is. Again, that's just, and literally, I mean, you just hand coded up 2 apps that basically do these CRUD operations, and I just gotta say it's pretty simple. I don't think, well, maybe I could have, I don't know, but I don't think I could do the .NET equivalent with that same number of lines that you've got there. It's definitely much more concise. Everything in there, even just outputting the standard output is pretty simple within Spring there.
Yeah, and if we want to, let's say, add a user, and we have a request parameter, we'll call this user, cleverly enough, user, and we'll do a return repo.save user. I'm going to go for broke. Why not, right? I mean, what's the worst that could happen? It just won't work. So let's do that. I'm going to save that, and then we'll kill that, because you mentioned CRUD and we just did the read. So I feel like we ought to at least do a create, if nothing else. And I do have a user.json sitting out there with some user information. So once that does that's stuff, it's stuff. And I always, let's see, post 8080/add, wasn't it? Add, okay. And then at, be sure I placed it out here. Let's see. Dev user.json. If not, well, we'll find out pretty quickly. Oh, bad request. Hold on. Let me think about this. At dev user.json. Oh, that may be my problem. Oh, dev user.json. Okay, that's there. So Papa Quebec is out there. So let's see here. I have the /add request. Helps when you have the right thing there. Yeah, so it's not a parameter we're passing. It's actually the body. So that's kind of an important distinction. We'll run that again. It's user error. It's almost always user error. Code just works.
Yeah, right.
We don't always work, but the wetware sometimes
yep.
It's in the way. So let's see here. Let's try that. Look at that. Okay, so we have it. Now if we do an HTTP 8080 and just pull them all back, we should have, yes, we do, go back. So now we have a couple operations in there, and it's super simple to add. I just added a post mapping and made sure I had the right indication that I'm providing this as the request body, a user, and then I return that user once it's saved. So
wow, it's just very, very cool. Very cool.
And a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, it looks like you're having fun. I'm having fun watching you. So, and I think our viewers are having fun watching you as well. So, yeah, this is great. Anything else, or is that it?
I guess let's stop here for today. But yeah, happy to come back and chat more another time. I just this has been great. Any excuse I get to talk with you, Mark, I just love it. So
thank you. Well, it's great. It's great having you on, and it's pretty powerful. What you just showed all of us today. I'm really impressed. So
thanks. Yeah.
Great to have you. And thanks everyone for joining us this week. Just some quick announcements. We run our monthly user group and we do monthly meetups. Come and join us and be a part of the community. We've got our meetup page right there, aka.ms, Cosmos DB user group. And come and join us. We'll have another user group coming up here, meetup pretty soon, if I'm not mistaken. This is episode, what are we on, 48? So I've got 47 other episodes. Feel free to go check them out. In fact, you can also watch another Spring Data episode that we had with Kshagra, actually, about 7-8 months ago, I think. It was a long time ago, but yeah, so you can get your fill on the Java there. And I think that is it for this week. Oh, I wanted to put up, I had this up earlier. This is the Spring Boot starters. So tell me about this real quick, this page. What are people going to see here?
Yeah, I mean, let me back up here. We have a lot of integrations that we have built with the Spring team and for consumption from the Spring side for Spring developers. So there are all kinds of starters out there, all kinds of libraries you can use that are as close to your normal, typical development workflow as you might imagine, just to extend your workflow to get you that planetary scale in many ways. As you can see under Spring Data, we list Cosmos DB and its options, but there are other options as well. And these are all available to you via starters for your Spring Boot application to get you connected quickly and easily to various Azure capabilities, various Azure offerings. So it's out there. If you go to the link that Mark has out there, the aka.ms/Spring Boot starters for Azure, you'll find more information about all these and a jumping off point to get to all of them. And then, of course, if you want to get to the code from today, I've got that under my GitHub account as just Cosmos DB for Spring Devs. I will be adding to that as we go because, again, we've just kind of scratched the surface. It was meant to be an introduction, but there's so much more, and I'll just be adding over time. So watch star, whatever, and that way you get notified when I share new stuff. So
yeah, very cool. All right. Well, hey, Mark, it was great having you on the show this week. Definitely enjoyed it. And that's it for this week, folks. Come join us next week. We're going to talk about another SDK, brand new Go SDK, which we've been working on and pretty excited about. I'll have Justine on from our team and also Matthias, who's been on the show before as well. And they're going to walk us through what we've got coming up in our new Go SDK that we're working on. Well, it's preview right now, but worth coming and checking out. So, Mark, thank you once again. Appreciate having you on the show this week. And that's it, everyone. We'll see you all next week. Thank you.
Pleasure is mine. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.